Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Well, it's Christmas for us in February. The Super Bowl delivered, namely, the Denver Broncos delivered. Also, we hit on 2 of the 3 props posted at dwyervip.com. Very nice windfall. I hope you got some of those picks, right? They were all offered for free here online. I believe my Super Bowl video is still up and will stay up, as all the other Super Bowl videos I've done are still online. Let's talk about the Super Bowl. Let me say this, right? And at kickoff, I believe the line was something like 5 or 4.5, depending on the shop at which you bet. Understand that I happen to have been in Vegas for championship weekend, and I was licking my wounds, right? Because I thought that the Arizona Cardinals were going to knock off the Carolina Panthers. In fact, I thought the week before the Seattle Seahawks were going to knock off the Panthers, right? In Carolina, right? So, just to take you through my day, the line opens at about 3.5. I got it at 4, right? Denver plus 4 over Carolina. I was thrilled. I couldn't believe how lucky I was to get it at 4. Now, I was staying at the Luxor. I went to get a meal at Palms. By the way, if you're in Vegas looking for a great cheap buffet, Palms is the spot. You're going to have a hard time beating Palms for value on food. Well, then I crossed the street, and I was at a local hangout, a place called Gold Coast, right? If you're looking to, save money, if it's really all about the gambling, you want a good sports book, but you don't want to pay a lot for things, right? I would encourage you to look at Gold Coast. All of this is down Flamingo Road, right? A little bit further than Rio, right? Gold Coast Sportsbook, they actually are selling hot dogs in the sportsbook. It's that kind of sportsbook. So as I sat down at Gold Coast, I was astonished. The line had risen to 5.5. I thought, wow, who are these people putting all this money on Carolina? Let me point out, there was a hush in the sports book. I looked around, I saw some gamblers. We were all astonished that the line was 5.5. It was an eye-opener. Just track the line. If the Arizona Cardinals were 3-point dogs to Carolina in Carolina, you would expect on a neutral field those teams to be an even money line, right? You would expect it to be, a game where it's a pick-em. So you're telling me now, away from home, Carolina was supposed to be a eventually 6-point favorite over a Denver Bronco team that had just beaten 2 quarterbacks with a combined 9 Super Bowl appearances the preceding 2 weeks, right? Tom Brady's won 4 Super Bowls. Ben Roethlisberger has won 2. Fair enough, right? Let me also point out that Carolina had played a relatively easy schedule, just schedule-wise. They were a relatively, overhyped 15-1, right? An untested 15-1 that I thought was too reliant on turnovers. Turnovers cut 2 ways. On the one hand, you could say, wow, these guys are great at stripping the ball. These guys are great at confusing quarterbacks and getting them to throw into coverage. But on the other hand, you're looking at turnovers, and To me, that's not as reassuring as a team that can win without a big turnover differential, right? Understand, turnovers are such a game changer that you could be outplayed. But if you get enough turnovers, you're going to win the game. Look at the stats on turnovers. Let me also say, too, that after the Kelvin Benjamin injury, I thought Carolina had weak wide receivers. Right? Ted Ginn, no doubt, is one of the fastest men in the NFL. But the position of wide receiver requires other skills. That's why we have men like Chris Carter and Michael Irvin in the Hall of Fame. Right? You have to be able to run routes. You have to be able to win jump balls against DBs by getting positioning, kind of like a great rebounder in basketball. Right? Let me say this too. The Carolina offensive line. You know, at least one of the starters on that offensive line had recently been cut by another team. That offensive line really wasn't a big-time juggernaut. Right? You kind of sensed they were going to have problems when you saw the problems that New England's offensive line had with the Denver front. Let me go one step further. The biggest complaint I had with the Carolina Panthers, right? And understand, the Panthers beat me the preceding 2 weeks. But the biggest complaint I had with them was this read option type of offense. Folks, there's a reason why the read option isn't that successful in the National Football League. There's a reason why guys like RG3 are out looking for teams. Right? It's because in the NFL, the defense is more sophisticated, it's faster. Right? Some teams will just hit the quarterback on every read option play, forcing the offense to make a decision. Are we going to put our franchise quarterback in harm's way? Right? The read option's the kind of thing where it's so novel that during the season, as you could imagine, a lot of these teams face it after playing the preceding Sunday, and they don't know which way to turn. Right? It's confusing. It works short term. Look at RG3's first year numbers. Right? It doesn't work long term. I want to encourage people to look at Carolina's schedule. They played the Atlanta Falcons. They blew out the Falcons the first time they played. Blew them out. Then you get to the rematch. Right? This team was supposed to be unbeaten at the time. You get to the rematch, and Atlanta was ready. Shut down this Carolina offense. Right? They'd seen the read option before. Right? They were in the division. When you're handicapping games, look at in the division games. See how the teams that know that team the best play them. Carolina got shut down the second time they played the Atlanta Falcons. Also, let's look at that 15-1 record. Right? If you go to Pro Football Reference, an excellent site, right now, and if you look at expected wins and losses, you're going to see that Pro Football Reference, after doing their statistical analysis, concluded that the Carolina Panthers should have lost a few games. Right? Shouldn't have been 15-1. Let me point out, too, games like the Giant game showed all of us, I thought, that Carolina's secondary, I'll give you Josh Norman, right, while having a Pro Bowler, wasn't as good as Aqib Talib and Harris, right, and Ward. It really didn't belong in the same sentence as the Denver Broncos secondary. Forget Von Miller. Forget the Marcus Ware. I'm just talking secondaries. I thought Denver's secondary was qualitatively better. Now let's talk about another factor, and it was meaningful. The quarterback, right? Look, I'm all for a passing of the torch. I'm looking for great quarterbacks. I'm looking for value. I'm looking for EV. But let me say, you show me a quarterback in his mid-20s playing in his first Super Bowl, and I'll show you a guy who's going to have problems. Right? Earlier you heard me reference Ben Roethlisberger, right? You know what? Go back and look at the numbers from Ben Roethlisberger's first Super Bowl. And I think Roethlisberger is the closest quarterback to Cam Newton style-wise, right? You know the kind of guy Cam is. He's not the, third-round Joe Montana pick, the third-round Russell Wilson pick, who doesn't have the prototypical numbers, right? The attributes that would get you picked at the top of the first round, right? A Montana and a Russell Wilson, these guys have to beat you with their brains, right? Because they're not the biggest men on the field. They don't have the strongest arm on the field, right? While both guys are above average runners, they're not going to run over you. They were never considered their team's power runner. You wouldn't see these guys, being the power runner like Cam is, right? Cam's a guy more like Ben Roethlisberger, more like Shaquille O'Neal. You know the kind of athlete I'm talking about. We call Ben Roethlisberger Big Ben for a reason, right? These guys are big. They have deep throwing capability, right? They're athletes at the position. You look at them and you understand it's about physical dominance. Now, I'm just here to tell you that, in my opinion, and this is just the thoughts of one gambler, guys like that who get by on their fastball, right? That's how they make it to the bigs. They have, analogy-wise, a big fastball, right? They're throwing stuff faster than everyone else, right? They're getting by on talent, right? Dominance, physical dominance. In my opinion, that kind of quarterback has a problem their first game in the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl is a different animal, right? You could have been the man in college. Cam wins a national championship in college. I'm just here to tell you that a lot of these guys get to the Super Bowl, the other team has had 2 weeks to prepare for you, right? Your film's never been broken down more than it is right before the Super Bowl. Go back and look at Tom Brady's first Super Bowl against the Rams. You're going to find that it wasn't his best Super Bowl. He wasn't throwing the ball all over the field, right? They had an interesting radio show on Super Bowl Sunday where they talked to the 3 quarterbacks who won 4 rings, right? And I'm just here to tell you that Brady, Bradshaw, and Montana all talked about how, that first Super Bowl is really, an unexpected experience. You're at the game, you're telling yourself, hey, I'm not going to be overwhelmed by this. Then you realize, you know what? This is the biggest game of the year. This game is being watched by more people than any other game I've played this season, possibly my life. Right? They're butterflies. They're strange feelings. Now, let's just say I looked at Cam Newton, and he's just a different kind of quarterback than Russell Wilson, who I consider an outlier. Right? Wilson's there doing math. right? He has to. His whole life, he's been told he's too small to play quarterback, right? Think about the different mindset. Wilson shows up on the team, third-round pick, right? No one's calling him the future face of the franchise. Cam Newton out the gate, first pick in the draft. Right? The assumption is, hey, he's bigger, he has the physical tools, right? You don't say that about Wilson or Montana. I feel the public saw a young guy, Russell Wilson, make the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl in his first Super Bowl in his mid-20s, and got fooled into believing that it was more possible than it was. Right? So, Cam comes out. Is he nervous? Of course he's nervous. Did you notice that he overthrew a few of the first few passes that he made? He's a nervous guy in his 20s. This is his first time. Right? He sees Lady Gaga sing the national anthem, and you know the rest. You understand this time it's different. This isn't the regular season. This time you're not playing at home. You're on the road across the country in San Francisco. Right? Now contrast that with Peyton Manning. Right? I'm not saying Peyton is the athlete he used to be. I'm not saying Peyton would be in the top third of the league in terms of quarterback rankings today. Far from it. Quite frankly, I personally thought Peyton should have been on the bench. Brock Osweiler should have been the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. But what I will say is Peyton Manning has been to Super Bowls before. Right? Peyton Manning knew what worked and what didn't work. Knew what to expect from the pregame, from the hype, from media day, from the 2 weeks, not 1 week, but 2 weeks before the game. Right? Let me say, too, that the Broncos understood how they were going to attack the read option. They also understood the mistakes that Seattle and Arizona made the preceding 2 games. Right? Luke Kuechly, a linebacker, gets pick sixes in both games. When you have that extra week to prepare the optical illusions, you can figure them out. Right? So, you were given points in this game while having the more experienced quarterback with Super Bowl experience and the better defense. Right? Let's just say we should all consider ourselves lucky. I thought the casino was giving away money to the point where I took the bet when the line was only 4. Right? You should also pay close attention, too, to betting patterns. When everyone around you likes a team, right? When 80% of the public is on one side of the play, you need to fade the public. Let me say, too, that when the line jumps out to 6, after opening at 3.5, right? When the team that's favored was only favored by 3 in the NFC Championship game, right? And when that line comes back down from 6, late, right? In other words, people betting big money showed up late. The sharps came in late on Denver. That should have told you all you needed to know. Right? Like Ben Roethlisberger, I'm expecting Cam Newton to be better in future Super Bowls. He was a young pup here in this one. Right? Going up against a tough defense, right? The top-rated defense on a team that had played a more difficult schedule to get here. Right? Food for thought. It's Christmas in February. Congratulations on winning the Super Bowl. I hope you've allowed the people around you to share in the bounty. We'll continue to post pics here and on dwyervip.com. Baseball season's around the corner. Trust me, I have my eye on that. Basketball, I don't think it's going to be that interesting. I think the NBA championship is going to be played in the Western Conference playoffs. Whenever the Golden State Warriors take on the San Antonio Spurs, I hope you were one of the fortunate who got the Spurs early on a futures play at 4-1. You could obviously hedge it later when they play Golden State. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Enjoy the winnings.